Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another franchise review here. Now, as I stated in my September channel update, I am looking to switch the franchise reviews from, instead of doing one video for each film in that series, just doing one video for the series as a whole. At least that's what I plan. There is one franchise that I do plan on doing a video for that is quite long, that I may have to split up into 3 different entries. But anyway, sticking with that idea, this latest franchise review, I'd recently checked out the Hatchet franchise, which started way back in around 2006, 2007, and has seemingly ended in 2017 with the final installment. So needless to say, I am a bit late on this one, but I'd heard this name for years, that there was this other slasher franchise that was definitely worth checking out. A nice replacement ever since the Friday the 13th kind of reboot they tried to do. It kind of fizzled away and nothing had really come of that. But you never know with some recommendations. There may have just been a lot of nostalgia behind it, or maybe a very small niche that was being filled that was really getting a lot of notice. But anyways, I was still interested. And then last summer, when I ran across Victor Crowley on Blu-ray, really cheap used, kind of reminded me to get around to checking this out. So we just started collecting some used copies of these films since I heard such good things about them. But before we dive in, just what is this franchise about? Well, since I'm covering several installments, I'll just start with the brief overall synopsis of how everything begins, which is, in a Louisiana swamp, a group of tourists get stranded, lost, and encounter Victor Crowley, the bayou butcher who is hunting them down. So it's a very simple slasher setup, which is fine. I'm all for simple, pure evil, slashers kind of slash, but there are 4 of these films, with the final installment simply being named Victor Crowley after the name of our slasher. And really, I'd heard enough. I was ready to check them out, so I sat down with them a few weeks ago as Hurricane Milton was literally bearing down on me that day, just kind of passing the time. So as we dive in, as usual, this will be relatively non-spoiler. I usually will save some time at the end for spoiler info, but there's really not much that I would want to worry about with that. Just want to give an overall feel about what this franchise is, what these entries are like, and are all 4 of them actually worth checking out. So as the basic outline goes, we have tourists go to a swamp, their boat breaks down, this killer in the area is now after them, killer eventually is defeated, finds a way to come back for part 2, is defeated again. Then there's another way that he comes back for part 3 where they expand upon the how, like how does he find a way to come back, before finally being finished off at the end of part 3, only to have him come back once more in a very loose way for part 4. So needless to say, there are some supernatural aspects of this that kind of come into the reasons why. Like, why is he able to come back? And can we use some of those reasons as a way to seemingly finally have taken him out in part 3? But and though this will be a quick review, which may make it seem like this film is a bit simple, that's only because these films are pretty simple. They are really simple and short. Most of them are only about like 80 to 85 minutes. Sweet spot for slashers, in my opinion. But it works really well in the way that they have kind of laid this out. Just a simple setup, short runtime, and then we're off to go with this story. Which, even though that story is a bit simple, there isn't much really needed to get these films going and to get you on board with the situation. What makes these films for me, why I really actually ended up enjoying all of them, well, most of them for the most part, were, at least for those first 3, were because first off, the cast. We do have some really great players in this, whether it's a quick scene or cameo or to a larger role. We have the likes of people such as Robert Englund, Kane Hodder, Felissa Rose, Tony Todd, rest in peace at the time of this video, who just passed away a few days ago, Danielle Harris. We even get Tom Holland, not that Tom Holland, that Tom Holland, of course. And, he's the one who kind of created my favorite vampire film franchise. And so many more just pop up in this film. So we really get a great cast and everybody holds their own. Second is the humor. This film, this entire series never really takes itself too seriously. They're always throwing in some corny stuff here and there, even when it comes to those kills themselves. And third, the kills themselves. As mentioned, they are over-the-top, brutal, and gory. But what makes this kind of violence and gore kind of stand as being quite different from something such as, let's say, the Terrifier films, is that they are intentionally over-the-top and very comedic because of that. So while they're gross, they're also laughable at how outrageous and unrealistic these kills are. It makes it a lot of fun. And finally, as mentioned, the run times of these films being only 80 to 85 minutes. They're quick. to the point, they don't drag on, and so on. So we get some quick fun slashing going on, and an interesting story in that there is this kid, deformed, growing up secluded with his dad in the woods. It's an accident that's happened. Now as he's older, he's out there killing people. There's a lot more to the story which does unfold throughout those first 3 films as we get some other flashbacks involving more stuff about his father, local bullying, witchcraft, and curses, which lead into why he can be seemingly dead only to come back again. And throughout all 3 of these films, everything is a lot of fun. Notice I'm saying 3 because I got some stuff to say about that 4th one in a moment. It felt almost like watching the new episode of a show, with some new characters kind of thrown in here and there. Excited to see some new kills and jokes thrown in, or just to see how are they going to bring him back and supposedly kill him off for good. But while parts 1 through 3 I would absolutely recommend checking out, a little warning about part 4, Victor Crowley. So this one just didn't really work for me that well. I know I only like to make videos about film that I enjoy and like to share, but this one, it kind of falls into that caveat of when I'm doing an entire franchise, I will make a video about some entries that I didn't really care for. And I felt like, basically, I felt like with part 3, they had a perfect ending. They found the real supposed how to do it. How do you really kill him? When it came to, killing him once and for all. It was done, completely done. So finding a way to bring him back definitely seemed unneeded at that point. And, I pretty much had what I wanted from parts 1 through 3. I was ready to leave it as that trilogy. But, besides their loose way of kind of bringing him back in part 4, the entire tone of the film really shifts, which is to be expected when you see that one of the cast members is from the Impractical Jokers. But the comedy is what does this in even more than how they bring him back. While all 3 did have a lot of comedy thrown in there, this one pushed it a little bit too far. And I felt like where the first 3 had a feel that they were maybe doing some slight parodying in certain aspects of other slashers, which came across like a celebration of what slashers were, as if they were saying, remember all the fun these films were over the decades, let's kind of make one of them too and have some fun with it. I felt like with part 4, they were almost parodying themselves. It's a little, I don't know, anything that was previously taken seriously seems to be wiped out in the favor of just crazier and crazier humor. And that comedy being so over the top there, that even to the point where at the beginning they're showing a flashback scene with Jonah Ray, it came across so silly that I really thought that it was going to pan out and show that they were actually watching a movie based on the killings in the swamp, similar to the stab films in the movie Scream, if that makes any sense. But no, it was exactly what the story is. They were leaning into the humor a lot more, and that part of it just didn't really work with me because it made part 4 feel like a joke that was going on too long. But it's not all bad, while part 4 may not be for me. I still got the sense that it was like watching a party that these filmmakers were kind of throwing as a group of friends wanting to bookend this franchise with some really silly stuff. So I can respect that, even if I didn't really enjoy that entry myself. But 3 out of 4 is really not bad. That's excellent, actually, when you think of, hit versus miss in some other franchise. I look at ones like the Hellraiser franchise, they got so many of those, and I think there's only 3 or 4 out of that entire group that I even enjoy. But, at least with this one, I get 3 really fun slashers out of this franchise, where the story's well written, the kind of film that they wanted to, for the kind of film that they wanted to make, and the runtime being where they wanted it to be. Where I watched 2.5 of these in one day, where the second half of part 3 I had to wait until after the hurricane had passed because it knocked out my power during it. But I was just going right from one film into another until that power got knocked out. The acting is just fine for what kind of content they're trying to, bring across, and you really buy into the characters. Special effects work really well for all the kills, which are not, which were all crazy and over the top. But, honestly, the first 3 at least are just a fun ride, which are more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my admittedly rambly kind of video here about the Hatchet franchise, which though I had scooped them all up on Blu-ray, they are available in Tubi. I believe they have all of them there. They are also split up over some other streaming providers as well. Also, while I ultimately didn't enjoy Victor Crowley, I may give it a second chance one day, knowing what I know about it, going into it for a second chance viewing, or it may be right up your alley, especially if you go in expecting that change in tone. But anyways, that's all that I have for this quick entry here. Remember, these Hatchet films are a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing and hitting that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put up new content, which is 1 to 3 times a week. Thanks for coming by, and I will see you on the next one.